Hello friends, Namaste. I am Chandan Kumar Mishra once again connecting with you with my knowledge audit related learning remarks. You can practice such kind of things of notes taking and sharing your own perspectives on learned behavior and thoughts from His Excellencies, Her Excellencies and intellectuals representing humanity across the globe on various international forums and national platforms also. So let us continue. I am sharing you the presentation on my learning remarks from United Nations General Assembly's 79th session broadcast onwards. The representatives from Antigua and Barbuda had addressed the UNGA, and Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda recognizes the consequences of war, thus advocates for peaceful world order. Survival of justice relies on equitable opportunities, peaceful civilian environment, and progress for sustainable development goals. Provisions of social security services are prerequisite for justice. Research and innovation-based incubation centers cultivates realistic solutions for scientific and social problems. Crisis for climate change, global warming, natural disaster, and armed conflicts should be sincerely recognized, and solution-oriented initiatives should be implemented with adequate finances allocation and manpower deployment. Antigua and Barbuda expresses a strong commitment for implementation of the Program of Action for Sustainable Development and promises to contribute for enforcement of United Nations Charter and treaties for resilient global peaceful world order. Antigua and Barbuda promises to assure the social, economic, and political justice of the fellow pupils. The PM expressed his willingness to improve availability and delivery of services dedicated for social justice and empowerment. Promising prospects for development related partnership with international financial institutions were expressed. All inclusive, progressive, partnership oriented expression of interest were expressed. Scrutiny of the propaganda are assured through logical framework based assessment of the statements through input, output, outcome, and impacts model of data analysis. Call of appeal to remain vigilant towards the appearing global challenges were presented with aim to promote resilient, peaceful, and progressive cooperation-based global international relationship. Uganda, Robina Navanja, PM and leader of government business in Parliament of Uganda, had addressed the assembly like she had or he had mentioned that crisis related consequences should be acknowledged and evidence based relief programs should be implemented. Art, heritage, literature, and culture of any civilization flourishes in peaceful, secure, and justful social environment. In proportion to the extent and occurrence of global challenges, adequate international cooperation is needed. Peaceful resolution of conflicts is advocated. Inclusive growth sustains for future generations. Wealthy and developed nations should support least developed nations and nations suffering from humanitarian crisis by finances, technology, and innovative program-based humanitarian services. Intergovernmental based management, audit, and reform related advisory could be analyzed before application for feasible, realistic, and progressive United Nations reforms after proper voting based adaptation of the useful and correct suggestions. Uganda respects UN Charter and treaties. India also respects United Nations Charter and treaties. Technical and financial commitment to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 2030 is expressed. Trustful international cooperation and friendly relationship with member nations is the process of resource mobilization. Uganda includes progressive suggestions by United Nations General Assembly and member nations into the National Program of Action. Capacity building of the human resources improves the efficiency and performance of the civilian and social services delivery organizations. Research and innovation for particular health crises related medicines, medical treatment procedures, and vaccines development are endorsed by Uganda. India also endorses the same. Value addition based international cooperation are encouraged. However, there are occurrence of climate change related challenges, but sustainable development goals oriented activities should be continuously framed and implemented. Political and trade relationship among member nations should respect international laws and follow liberalized policy to improve the friendly relationship among the member nations of the United Nations. Onwards, started on 31st July 2025 with morning Saraswati prayer and reviewed of my presentation on chanting of sacred religious and spiritual hymns of the Sri Ramcharitmanasa written by Goswami Tulsidas to adore the life, personality and lessons preached by the incarnation of the Lord Vishnu as Lord Ram into this world. Ramcharitmanas is a biographic sketch of the life incidents related with literary accounts of the marriage of Lord Shiva, firstly with Lord Sati and later on with Goddess Parvati. Goddess Parvati. It also provides information about the obedience of penance by sages and monks, followed by receipt of blessings and boon by revelation of the God subjected of their worship. Continuation of the sequence of significant religious spiritual incidents documents the activities related with observance of Yajna for birth of child Ram, Lakshman, Bharat and Shatrughan born after Yajna. They receives academic education. Onwards, Ram and Lakshman visited on diplomatic mission with their master sage Vasishtha to Janakpur to participate in Swayambar of goddess Lakshmi incarnated as Lord Sita. During travel, Ram liberates Ahilya. Marriage ceremony follows after Dhanush Yagya in Janakpur. Presentation are available on my YouTube class channel ID at Chandan My Vidya. Onwards, the life lessons follows and Ram conquers Ravana and returns back with Sita to his birthplace Ayodhya. We celebrate this festive occasion on Dashahara by burning egofis of Ravana also. As per the broadcasted information on website of the United Nations, Panama assures the presidency of the Security Council for the month of August 2025. Proposed action plan for the month of August related schedules of program and activities would be presented by the representatives of the Panama to the United Nations Security Council soon, and they had presented the same. As the ongoing summit for future United Nations General Assembly 80th initiatives, financing for development and peer review of the United Nations General Assembly 79 session is being carried out. Suggestions and recommendations for forthcoming 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly would be cultivated through review of the resolutions and outcomes of the various bilateral diplomatic missions, multilateral diplomatic missions, conduct of the multilateral and regional forums of discussion, and international financial institutions such as BRICS, ASEAN, SAARC, BIMSTEC, NATO, European Union, African Union, Australian Group, Nuclear Supply Group, International Atomic Energy Authority, Wassenaar, World Economic Forum, World Government Summit, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, Munich Security Council, UNESCO, UNICEF, UNITAR, IMO, World Trade Organization, UNCTAD, IFC, World Bank, IBRD, IMF, and the suggestions of the AGM, Annual General Meetings of the Central Financial Regulatory Bodies like Reserve Bank of India of the member nations would also be considered to plan agenda of forthcoming 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly. Then prepared and uploaded my presentation from my own message application-based research reports forum Chandan Kumar Mishra self, brain map bone secrets, research reports on my mobile phone number +918860827901 with screen recorded application software on my YouTube application ID at Chandan Vidya. Then availed stress management consultancy to a visiting guest Sasikan Pathak, Chankuri Devi and visited my maternal in-laws village Kurkuri last week to participate in a remembrance event and reviewed my presentation on Sri Ramcharitmanas on my YouTube channel. Then watched a presentation on United Nations YouTube channel ID at United Nations about report on violations of human rights and forwarded the video link to the United Nations Human Rights Council and watched guidance video on process of functioning of United Nations Human Rights Council. Then Ma Shadya Se Prathna and broadcast review of my presentation on approach paper for systematic and progressive thinking onwards. Note, I am reviewing my own recorded presentations on spiritual and religious holy text and sacred books of Hinduism recorded in my voiceover on my YouTube channel ID at Chandan Vidya nowadays on priority basis. However, my sincere attendance of the classes presentation as broadcasted by Government of Indian authorities, media houses and United Nations institutions remains as an important component of the syllabus of knowledge research and developmental documentations of mine. Review of the daily media brief by United Nations avails realistic and prompt information about the global context. Issue specific understandings improves the intelligence in productive and progressive manner. I have noticed that as the medical health checkup based consultation with healthcare service providers facilitates a person to receive proper medication, precautions, treatment, and treatment follow up healthcare rehabilitation services. Similarly, the process of participation in knowledge processing sessions in events being organized by physical presence and or sincere review of the broadcasted teaching learning materials improves the knowledge skills, attitude, reasoning, analysis, decision making and systematic expression capacity in written, typed or audio visual means of the participants of the interactive teaching learning process for sustainable development. Then activity carrying forward the review of United Nations General Assembly 79 session broadcasted playlist on United Nations YouTube class channel ID at United Nations from page 17 onwards of this notebook. Then St. Vincent and Grenadines PM speech. Let us understand a few of the highlights of the presentation. Hint, if you can study the video description and transcribe and or listen the presentation, you can understand also. It is not simple, but it is not difficult also. Key highlights. Generally advocated for considering the interest of low-lying coastal countries amid forecasted challenges of climate change related sea level rise. Advocated for paying special attention to the least developed countries. Also advocated for climate finance and sustainable development, especially mentioned social democracy and advocates for obedience of United Nations Charter for peaceful cooperations among the member nations. Mr. Ralph Gonzalez, PM of St. Vincent and Grenadines, spoke about liberal global financial practices to assure stress-free resource acquisitions and distribution. Prime Minister of India, Mr. Narendra Modi, also exhibits sense of understanding and dedication to achieve sustainable development goals and contribute for control of climate change related disaster risk reductions. He recognizes the uncertainty of the probabilities of the occurrence of the unexpected natural disaster, thus advocates for improvement of disaster resilient infrastructure development, improving disaster relief and response preparedness capacity, and sufficient disaster relief response if as such incident occurs anywhere, anytime. He also advocated for protection, rescue, care, life security, uninterrupted supply of essential life-saving commodities, and humanitarian services to the vulnerable and affected populations of armed conflicts, civilian insurgencies, famine, flood, drought, tsunami, tornado, earthquake, landslides, pandemic, or other humanitarian crises. Then, Kingdom of Eswatini, PM Russell Mamiso Dlamini had addressed the assembly and mentioned about sustainable development, protection of human rights and human dignity, improved global solidarity, progressive incorporation of the reforms and organizational capability improvement suggestions and recommendations of the international regulatory and arbitrary institutions by research scholars, internal auditors, external auditors, serving staffs, guests of honor, independent research professionals, allied organizations, and representatives of the member nations, media experts, subject domain experts, impaneled service providing agencies, and or others, and obedience of INDCs, intended national demand contributions, peace, development and prosperity, and environmental protection. Then what are the aspects and steps of permanent settlement into abroad from native country to any other member nations of the United Nations? It need to be managed so that the refugee crisis could be controlled. Then Malta addressed the assembly. United Nations 79th session speech by Robert Abela, Prime Minister of the Republic of Malta. He mentions that sincerely recognizes the problems and consequences of the humanitarian emergency and advocates for prompt relief, promotes United Nations Human Rights Charter, glorifies the significant role of United Nations institutions for the global peaceful progress of the humanitarian society, and takes initiatives for pupil welfare as per the calibration of the United Nations Charter and treaties, as well as solemnly governs Malta as per Republican constitutional provisions, emphasizes on assuring security from defense, economic crisis, social challenges, and support in humanitarian crisis, advocates for peaceful resolution of the disputes and protection of the humanitarian rights of the normal and distressed people, and promoted climate action. Remarks: as the expert's opinion notifies about specific problems and seeks its appropriate solutions during the speech delivery at certain forum or inscribes the problem solution frameworks, the due process follows in due course of time during review by competent authorities by processing the expressed thoughts, concepts, and opinion to frame and implement issue a specific program of action. However, every one should understand that emergency related requests are promptly followed up during ongoing sessions. Parameters of evaluation of the win or lose in any kind of competition is not determined by only one indicators. It should sincerely consider several related evaluation indicators continuously. Then South African President Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa address to the 79th UNGA United Nations expresses consolidation of consensus for justice enforcement for all. South Africa is focusing to assure adequate investment for improving the ease of living and sustainable inclusion of the diversified groups of the human society into welfare schemes for protection of their humanitarian rights and delivery of social security and humanitarian services, promotes obedience of due process of right enforcement as per the mandates of the United Nations Human Rights Charter, United Nations Charter, and other human welfare oriented policies and acts formulated by various international agencies. Mr. Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa advocates for diplomatic immunity and classified civilian infrastructure as not subjected to armed attack, even if any armed conflicts occurs in and in generally advocates for peaceful progress. Then advocated for financing activities for sustainable development and climate change related disaster risk reduction and disaster relief related humanitarian responses. Then there are a few of the notes that you can also write on day-to-day basis to update yourself that how you are working properly. I would like to put forward special assumptions that समानुभूति और सहानुभूति के आध्यात्मिक व नैतिक मूल्य मानव सेवा की भावना को पुष्ट करते हैं. Ethical spiritual values of empathy and sympathetic boost the feelings and sentiments of humanitarian services. Then watched broadcast on President of India YouTube channel about meeting of officers trainees of Indian Foreign Services with President Draupadi Murmu. The convener of the program briefed the assembly about the schedules of activities for course curriculum Commencement, desk review of the books, reports, and broadcast of the international organizations and distinguished excellencies were considered as an important course curriculum. A delegate expressed his a delegate expressed his perspective on various domains of studies and interventions for successful diplomatic ventures with aim to contribute for national development. Another speaker shares experience of orientation training. She emphasized on security development, participation in events, celebration of festivals, exposure visits, internship experiences, value admiration of Indian art, heritage, and culture and civilization. Then President Draupadi Murmu expressed trust in productive service by trainees. Then broadcasted my learning from UN broadcast, review my request for information to Central Bank of India for account opening, then reviewing historic White House roundtable by President Trump of United States of America, Zelensky, European Union President Ursula von der Leyen, Italian PM Giorgia Meloni, and France President Emmanuel Macron and other eminent excellencies. At broadcasted at Diario S YouTube channel. The President of United States of America, Donald Trump, meets and greets guests, confidence building measures, CBMs for security arrangements, agreements, and cooperation were endorsed. Trump referred Russian President Putin also. Then immediate ceasefire and resilient peaceful ventures were appreciated as important agenda item of discussion. Zelensky, President of Ukraine, spoke about security guarantees, humanitarian services, trilateral meeting is assured to sign peace agreement. It is assumed to be organized soon. The release of hostages, reconstruction activities were presented as requisite agenda of discussion. Ceasefire, release of hostage, reconstruction, and humanitarian services delivery were endorsed by a panel member. European Union President Ursula von der Leyen speaks for protection of the human rights of the Ukrainian people, and ceasefire were sincerely advocated by world leaders. President Trump promotes negotiations, arbitration, advocacy, and diplomacy as an effective means of ceasefire declaration. Italian PM Giorgia Meloni promoted peace, justice, and endorsed President Trump's perspective for ceasefire declaration and advocated for protection of humanitarian rights of the Ukraine in a special mention and in general for global humanity. President of France Emmanuel Macron discusses avenues of ceasefire declaration through trilateral, quadrilateral meetings and peace agreements on global forum. He encourages peaceful, progressive developmental